It's going live, and hello and welcome to the, I believe this is the 86th MovieBoozer.com Pubcast. And bless you, by the way. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and joining me today are... Introduce thyselves.
Bill Arsenault.
And Bill Leon.
The two Bills.
Right.
Is there something religious about 86? Because you said bless you.
Because someone was sneezing, or...
Oh. I thought, because you said it immediately after...
See, I was brought up in a family where we're polite and stuff, you know?
Yeah, well, I did that before the broadcast, when Bill Leon sneezed really badly. I was like, bless you, you know, but...
Oh, yeah, but that's not recorded, so...
So it doesn't count, right?
Exactly.
But you see, you said it after the 86 edition, and I thought, like, oh, maybe there's something in the Bible that said that, you know, 86 something, I don't know.
I think the 86th edition of the Bible is the one they inserted the section about stoning gays, probably.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, well, in that
yes,
case...
I dropped science on you there. No, I didn't.
Marriage is between a man and a woman. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. Well, on that positive note, time for a non-advertisement because we get no money for this, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Today, in Illinois at least, is the last day of summer-like weather, because we're going into 50-degree weather starting tomorrow. So I thought I'd drink a summer drink. Bud Light Lime Arita.
Yes, for those of you who follow these pubcasts very closely, on a previous edition, I believe it was a commentary track, I actually drank a strawberry Arita. It was not bad. You know, it was okay. I'm not a connoisseur, so I can't compare. All I know is it got me tipsy.
I'm looking to see if there's anything about shaking it or not. It doesn't say, so I'm gonna...
I don't think so. I think it's already made up. I think you're good to go.
So anyway, I actually have myself all prepared. I got a glass of ice with a little bit of salt on it too. So
you probably don't even need the salt.
It's a margarita.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, you probably don't need it.
Well, I mean, probably don't. You're right. But
get all the product placement in there.
What Coca-Cola, yeah. But what did Milton say in Office Space? He said, I said no salt, but they gave me salt.
I put strychnine in the guacamole.
I asked for a Mai Tai and they gave me a pina colada. All right. So.
There you go.
Let's give her a taste. Now it's carbonated, which is certainly not a good sign as far as margaritas go.
Also, it looks like water that's been recently fracked.
That's true. Well, I mean, it does come from Bud Light, so.
That looks like the water in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, really. I wouldn't know, but still.
The salt was a good choice because it's probably killing whatever crap is in this.
Ooh, it's not a good sign.
Oh, you know what that tastes like?
Oh boy!
Okay, this is what it tastes like. It tastes like someone had drank, like, they had a glass full of, like, Bud Light, and they drank it to about here, and then someone, you know, have you ever done that thing where you don't even think about it, you just fill a glass with water, and there might be a little bit of whatever you drank last in that glass, and so you get that kind of nasty aftertaste?
Yep,
sure.
Whatever you had. This is the nasty aftertaste of beer in a... I'm having to give this the courtesy of calling it a margarita. This is a lemonade with carbonation, but with beer in it. Just a few weeks ago, I think you'll remember I drank a German beverage, which...
Oh yeah, it was like an orange soda type thing?
No, it was a beer, I think like a Hefeweizen or something like that, but it had...
What's it called?
Oh, I'm looking... Hold on. It had...
Well, describe
it. German beer with...
I thought I heard you say Hefeweizen. Is that what you said?
I think it was...
Did you say Hefeweizen?
Hefeweizen.
That's a funny word. Hepweizen.
Let's see. Now I'm looking because I don't know if it was lemon or.
I want to say it was orange, but
I think it was Radler. Sounds like a familiar name. No, it wasn't. Hell with it. We'll just go back and watch.
But it was very good from what.
Yeah, whatever that was, they figured out how to mix beer and citrus well. So without going into our archives and crap, needless to say, well, granted, this 25-ounce can was $1.99. So
I have a little bit of a follow-up question. Bill, you saw Sin City too, right?
How is this a follow-up?
Well, we talked about it last week and you weren't here.
following
Okay.
up on last week.
I thought you were following up on the beer. Like, speaking of crap, you've seen Sin City too.
Yeah, this is a follow-up from last week.
I think it's a good one.
We talked about Sin City, but you did see it, right?
Yeah, I saw it and I had to review it for a local magazine.
You want to share anything about it?
Sure. Well, when I first saw Sin City, the first Sin City, I saw it with a group of friends. It was a packed theater, and I was just absolutely blown away by it. It felt almost like a revolution of ideas and visuals and style. I walked out of the theater going, if that doesn't get a Best Picture nomination, there's something wrong. Of course, it wasn't going to get a Best Picture nomination, but that was my feeling. I felt that for me, this was good enough in that arena. It was. It had. I don't know. It was just really good, and so I was excited for the sequel. I've been excited for it for years now. I've kind of gone into the Sin City stories a little bit, reading the graphic novels, getting into it, and there's some pretty dark ones, but they're all pretty dark. But there's some light in there, There's something that kind of keeps it from being just downright depressing,
Well, I'll go ahead and repeat something I said last week, which is the moment in the first Sin City film where I got it was when Marv is driving and holding the guy's head on the ground outside of his car. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's like, I'm having a ball.
That was literally the moment where it all came together for me, and I just got it.
I got it from the get-go. I think from the noir feel when Josh Hartnett walks up with a cigarette and.
I got all that. I'm saying just the over-the-top style of it.
Right. Yes.
I just love noir in general, and the way Sin City took noir and injected it into a comic book attitude seamlessly was really cool.
The way it was described, Robert Rodriguez described it as taking a film and turning it into a comic book.
Yeah.
Basically bringing it down a notch, or actually not even down a notch, bringing it up a notch, because it's a totally different medium.
Yeah, I think it's a meeting of two mediums. I don't think it's bringing it up or down. I think it's just a this is the Russians and the Americans coming together for the first time during World War II when they met in Germany, uniting against a common enemy.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get a lot of World War II buffs out there writing you nasty emails like, no, there's differences. It was a different situation. It wasn't as simple as they come together.
Well,
these guys hated these guys, and blah. I don't know.
Well, I'm not talking about the alliance itself. I'm talking about the instance in which, during the war in Germany, the Germans had been beaten back to the point where American forces and Russian forces bumped into each other for the first time.
Oh, that. Yeah. Okay.
That brief period of meeting where you realized this war is basically won. It's not completely over, but that's the feeling I got with Sin City. It felt like I had that instant feeling of a where I could see movies didn't have to be samey. They didn't have to be unoriginal forever. They, new ideas were coming up that were inventive.
Right, and this was coming up at a time when the 3D revolution, if you want to call it that, hadn't really. It was starting to trickle in, but Superman Returns was coming out, and that had some elements of 3D. Say what you will, but I'm just saying historically it had some 3D stuff in it, and then slowly, more films became integrated and everything. But Sin City was not in 3D. The first one, it was just showing what can be done with like green screen and digital cinematography and lighting and tricks like that, like using modern technology and integrating it with like old school style storytelling and filmmaking techniques and merging them together. What I loved was how special that movie felt. It was like, okay, Robert Rodriguez is basically the director, but he brought in Frank Miller as like the co-director, and he felt so strongly about this he dropped out of the DGA, the Directors Guild. And on top of that, the movie has a special guest director. And try to guess which scene Quentin Tarantino directed, and I got it immediately when I saw it.
We definitely talked about that last week. It's easily my favorite scene in the movie. It's such a cool sequence, and it's hilarious.
It's such a cool sequence, and you get this feeling it's very much a Tarantino scene, despite it being taken almost wholesale from the graphic novel. There are some subtle differences where Tarantino's signature is on that scene. But getting back to the sequel, I was
Sin City, A Dame to
a dame to kill for, right? I know, I'm fucking up. But no, years later, the movie's in development hell. Frank Miller decides I'm gonna make The Spirit.
Let's talk about The Spirit. We were supposed to talk about The Spirit last week and we didn't.
Well, let's get to The Spirit in a moment because I don't want to interrupt the.
No, it's okay. Actually, The Spirit has a lot to do with my feelings on Sin City too.
Really? That's a bad sign.
Exactly. That's the problem. See, I love the fact that Frank Miller felt it was cool or he was confident in himself to become a sole director. He directed a commercial with Chris Evans and Evan Rachel Wood that was green screened. It was for a cologne, I think.
Didn't he also write RoboCop 3?
No, I think he wrote
RoboCop 2.
He wrote RoboCop 2, and he was in RoboCop 2. He played a small character, but anyways, what happened was Will Eisner died, and at the funeral, someone came up to him and was like, "Would you like to direct or be a part of the making of The Spirit?" And he was like, "That's too big. I can't do it." And then he walked away, but then he ran back and was like, "I won't let anyone else take it. I want it."
Yeah.
Which is cool that he would feel so strongly about it. But the problem is he felt so strongly.
He had some sort of serious grudge against him.
He made it into Frank Miller's The Spirit, not Will Eisner's The Spirit. Because if you follow The Spirit, and I did the barest of research on it, it's a really cool story. There's a lot of cool characters, and really it could have been done perfectly with the green screen Sin City style. It really could have looked really cool. Instead, Frank Miller decides to make Looney Tunes.
And that's the appeal of The Spirit. Like, it is bad, but
I have a copy of it on top of my Blu-ray player right now, and I bought it for like $2 or something. And
I gotta say, if you can't laugh at the fact that Samuel L. Jackson literally throws a kitchen sink at him, then there's no hope for you.
Yeah, there are some. Frank Miller took a lot of liberties with the material to make it kind of his own, which I think is daring and bold.
He's always done this. He's always done this. There's an issue of Batman that he wrote where Batman calls Robin a retard.
Yeah.
Right.
And it has the famous line, "I'm the goddamn Batman."
Yes.
Right. I got no problem with authors or directors putting their own stamp on a material that was made by someone else. You don't always have to be totally faithful.
Right.
But in the case of The Spirit, it was just such a crazy mishmash of ideas that didn't quite blend well and came off as ill-conceived at times and a little too silly for its own good. But at the same time, it might be a movie that's completely misunderstood. I really can't make heads or tails of it.
Misunderstood. I would call it.
Here's the thing.
Bad.
I'm going to connect this with A Dame to Kill For. everything that made the Spirit at least engaging as a piece of maybe unintentionally bad movie making. Um, all of those features were present in A Dame to Kill For, minus the charm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what happened, and this is my segue into A Dame to Kill For. There are two things that happened between The Spirit and A Dame to Kill For. The first one was the critical analysis of The Spirit and the box office bomb that it was. I think didn't help Frank Miller. I think Frank Miller, hasn't he always wanted to break into Hollywood?
I believe so, yes.
That's always been something, and now he gets to direct something by himself, and it's this big production, big stars, and it does horribly, and is received horribly.
To be fair, he shot himself in the foot with The Spirit.
I was looking forward to The Spirit when it came out, but then,
I was too, but then I saw the movie, and...
Yeah, I was in the theater. I want to describe my theater experience, because this is just a little aside. I was in the theater with only like 5 other people, and one of them was like a guy in a wheelchair and some friends. I think they were maybe from a local home for disabled people, because it was like a group of them and a nurse, and I could tell they were having a horrible time watching this movie.
That was
like
one poor nurse.
Right, they were just watching it like I could see one guy shaking his head like, what the hell is this shit? And I was like, oh man, that's like the best review you could get. Like, is just these guys just sitting there expecting just to enjoy something and not getting anything out of it, And it's a movie for nobody, kind of, But there was that, and I think maybe that brought Frank Miller down several notches. His spirit, if you will, was brought down. And in the meantime, Robert Rodriguez went on to make co-direct Machete. He produced a couple movies. He co-directed the first Machete with some other guy. And some guy that worked at Troublemaker Studios. Like, I think that was his attempt to train the guy to become a director. Like, I think he was doing the guy a favor or something.
Boring movies out of potentially awesome
content, right? Exactly.
The co-director of Machete was Ethan Manikis, and
yes.
Looking at his credits, apparently as a director he had some. That's interesting. He's listed as having. He's listed as having worked on Grindhouse. And,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
You know what? Wikipedia's messed up. I'm gonna go to just IMDb.
Well, anyways, Robert Rodriguez did that. He suffered Grindhouse, which I thought he did a great job with, but the movie didn't.
An editor.
Right. The movie didn't do too well. Obviously, he had an affair, and was attached to so many multiple projects. He did Machete Kills.
And Predators.
What's that? And, he didn't do Predators. He produced Predators.
Oh, really? I thought he directed that.
It was the guy that directed Predators directed that movie Armored with Matt Dillon.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, that's the same director, but he's another guy from Troublemaker Studios. But anyways, Robert Rodriguez is also another guy who, after the first Sin City, kind of had a string of, I don't want to say failures, but
you can go ahead and say it.
I don't want to be mean because I like Robert Rodriguez, but
I do too. But I would say failures. I think Machete had so much potential, and that
from a critical standpoint, he made movies that were not up to his, to his level. Essentially, it felt like he kind of went a little lazy. Mm-hmm. Like he even created a studio just for movie projects that he could just churn out quickly and not give a damn about the special effect design. Like Machete Kills, that was made. I think the studio name was like Trouble something. It's like a spin-off of Troublemaker, but specifically for making movies on the fly with computer graphics from Birdemic. Because if you watch Machete Kills, it's got a lot of bad CGI special effects in it.
Yeah,
that was intentional to match the Grindhouse style.
No,
I'm kidding.
I know you're kidding, but even bad Grindhouse movies had practical effects that looked somewhat competent, you know. So anyways,
you know what? I would forgive all of those special effects problems because the first Sin City has some of them too. If the stories were engaging,
were incredibly compelling, and they were in that Sin City. Well, anyways.
Well, okay, in A Dame to Kill For, they were not.
Right. We're now segueing finally. Finally, the movie comes out of development hell. They make the film. They decide to hold off release for a year, which was a little unusual.
That's very unusual.
But they do that, and then it comes out. I go to the theater to catch it at the Thursday night showing before its Friday night release, and I'm one of maybe 10 people in the audience. Already a bad sign for its draw. Yeah. Maybe it's been too many years since the first Sin City, almost a decade. Maybe people have forgotten or whatever. I don't know.
I think it has been, because the fact is that people were clamoring for a Sin City sequel when it came out, but so much time has passed, and so many of these, after the 300 and such, so many of these CGI-heavy, ultra-manly kind of movies have come out, and I think people are just sick of them.
That could be part of it, yes, but let's talk about the actual experience of watching it, and then the story itself, because that's a whole other sack of beans right there. Like
the story. For people who were here last week, this is going to be a retread, but
with me.
Yes.
In it. The movie starts off with a story that I really liked from the Sin City graphic novels. It was just a quick little story of Marv not knowing where the hell he is and going into his old neighborhood and fucking up some fraternity kids. It was supposed to kind of show the dark side of Marv and, you know, how he's kind of like he can potentially be a threat, but he can also be a good guy if he wanted to. You know, it was this really crazy story, but we kick off with that. And there's this bit in there where he gets up from a car crash, and literally every piece of narration is describing his body movement. Like, I got up, and then he gets up. I winked at the camera. I wink at the camera. I move my hand across my forehead. Where am I? And then he looks dazed. And it reminded me of, what was that old TV show with that comedian, what's her name? She did a lot of improv. She had what's that guy's name? The actor who played the bad guy in Blazing Saddles was on the show.
Oh fuck! I know his name. His name is Harvey Korman.
Harvey Korman, yes.
The show. Ken, do you know what?
Carol Burnett, right?
Yeah, but the Carol Burnett show was sketch comedy. So
yeah, exactly.
Are you talking about this?
Yes, there was a sketch they did where Harvey was a writer, and he was writing out like scenes from a movie, and in the corner of the screen there'd be the actors playing out the scene, and every once in a while he'd erase something that he just wrote and rewrite it, and the actors had to quickly get back into place, and that's what made it funny. It reminded me of that, but in a very poor way. You know, Mickey Rourke is trying to act with the narration, and I was just laughing when I was watching this. I was like, this is not what I remember from the first Sin City. This is a bad start.
It felt like really forced noir dialogue, where it was like they were trying to turn just stage direction into narration. It just didn't work. I mean,
this particular story didn't translate too well.
Noir dialogue is not easy to write well because it has to be snappy, it has to be creative, and it has to be, sharp and witty. And that's the problem. I think
it has to balance that out with also being kind of cheesy as well, and that's where the challenge.
I think the cheesiness aspect is on. I wouldn't call it cheesy. I would call it just stylized and
I would call it cheesy because
I would say campy. To me, cheesy is unintentional. Campy is intentional. So I'll go with that.
I would say it's heightened, a heightened reality kind of, and that can be cheesy, but not inherently cheesy. That's like more like a perception, I think. You know, campiness is, you know, I agree with that. So, anyways, the movie finally kicks off, and the way the movie starts, it got me thinking. You know, is this going to be like a vignette, just like before, like where we have one story and it completes itself, then we have another story that completes itself, and then we have a third story that completes itself. The way the movie starts, it's almost as if all the stories converge at the bar at Katie's,
Yeah.
and it doesn't start off as a vignette. It starts off as if they're all happening at the same time, and we're going to get a more fluid movie. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting way to do a sequel. You know, I thought, let's see where this goes. And then they crap out and go back to the vignette. And I was like, oh, they decided not to do that. They decided to just tease us with that and then go on from there. So the stories in this, some of them are new. One of them is a classic, the Dame to Kill For story. But two of them are new. The one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a gambler, as a wheeler and dealer, you know, and the other one with Nancy basically going crazy. The Joseph Gordon, what's that?
Where does Josh Brolin fit in?
Josh Brolin plays Dwight. He plays Clive Owen from the first movie. And in that movie, it made sense because he was dropping little hints of what happened in A Dame to Kill For. A Dame to Kill For takes place before the events of the first Sin City, and in that movie, Dwight has a new face because he's on the lam from what he did in A Dame to Kill For. And this is part of my problem with the movie.
He also had an accent change, by the way.
He also had an accent change, by the way, yeah. This is part of my problem in the movie. There's an oversaturation of characters who talk like Christian Bale's Batman. And, you know, like, yeah, what do you think about that? Hi, my name's Marv. Fuck you. You know, it's... You're dealing with a Rourke. You know, there's just too much of that. And on top of that, you know, the trailers for the movie advertised outlaws will become heroes. Really?
Yeah, that didn't happen.
There is no heroism in this movie. You have men killing women. You have in the first Sin City, you did have outlaws becoming heroes.
I would say
Marv was a hero. You know, Dwight was trying to save a bunch of prostitutes. You know, from suffering horrible fates. You know, and he even saved his girlfriend from Benicio del Toro, which is something I could probably say 100 times. No, that's not a knock against Benicio del Toro. I just think that's a funny thing to say. And so in this movie, it all, by the end of it, the movie ends with the ending of the Nancy storyline, and it all felt disgusting and repulsive and depressing.
You know what it felt like to me? It felt like if Sin City was directed by your creepy uncle, who did Time for Touching People the wrong way.
That sounds about right. Except that movie's already been done. And it's called Powder.
Yeah,
shit.
We could do a whole episode about Powder.
We should do a whole episode about Powder, but now is not the time nor the place.
I could talk about my elementary school friends going to a birthday party to see that movie, and I was like, oh God, you kids.
We should definitely talk about Powder at some point.
At some point, but right now it's not the time. But Sin City 2 definitely, in my review of it, I wrote, what was going on with Frank Miller's soul when he...
Well, do you know the kind of downward spiral he's been on since like the 90s?
That's kind of what I got, but I was like, but Sin City, the first movie, was such a bright thing. What I'm guessing is maybe Robert Rodriguez. Well, you know what I mean, brighter than this. What I think happened was everything that happened after the first Sin City movie between Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller brought them down, and they were like, you know what, let's reinterpret these stories as being like darker and more effed up and hopeless. And
the thing that I got out of it was a distinct turn towards the sexism. I mean, you could easily argue that the first Sin City is sexist, but at least the female characters in it had stuff to do. In this movie, they were literally, even the character who was, quote, the Dame to Kill For, who was your supposed to be a femme fatale, was nothing more than window dressing.
Right.
I agree and disagree with the window dressing
when
part
I
of Eva Green.
halfway into the movie, the thought in my mind that just kept entering into it every time a woman appeared was, okay, Frank, we get it. You don't like women very much.
Read a comic book of his. It's that every 5 fucking seconds, and that's really what I'm getting at. Is that from what I've heard as basically a spectator of comic books, Frank Miller's writing just kind of went to shit after the original Sin City comics.
He is a bit misogynistic. Well, not a bit, a lot misogynistic.
Yeah, like heavy-handed.
Like pretty heavy, but at least the first Sin City, and I'll agree with Ken, had some strong female characters that weren't just damsels in distress. Maybe they were in distress, but they didn't need a guy helping them necessarily.
Right. Maybe the movie wouldn't pass the Bechdel test, but at the very least,
well, this is very, very, very debatable because a lot of them are prostitutes. Goldie's a prostitute. Rosario Dawson's a prostitute.
No, they're literally all prostitutes.
Right. That's a catch right there. Is like, okay, they're strong. They're like iron fisted, but they're whores.
Yes.
That's like Frank Miller's way of like saying like, look, a woman can't be anything else other than a whore. Nancy.
Even that female cop character was sitting around half naked for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, which female cop? Oh, Carla Gugino.
Barb's parole officer.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. Yeah. But that stuff was also taken from the comics, so.
And
yeah, that was by Frank Miller. So yeah, okay.
That doesn't excuse the
that doesn't excuse anything, right? but in this new movie, Sin City 2, it's crazy because okay, the Dame to Kill For story, that was already a created thing. That's already a story that existed. And that pretty much went down somewhat the same way the story itself went down. I would say there were some subtle differences that made it a little worse. That made it that much more misogynistic, that much more depressing, and made you hate Dwight, actually, in the end. He's like, she's not a goddess, she's a monster. I was like, I disagree with you, Dwight. I think she's a woman who's been beat down in her life, and now she wants to secure herself.
Frank, who hurt you?
I didn't see that. She married a guy for the money, and then successfully got Dwight to kill her husband, even though her husband, the only problem that her husband had was that he couldn't stand her because she couldn't stand him.
Right, and she is manipulative. I'll give it all that. She is evil, but at the same time,
that way.
It's almost like she's evil because she suffered trauma in her past, kind of like in Dredd with the female villain in that movie. I got the feeling that this wasn't something where she's just born evil. She was just kind of forced into that position, and now she's using.
It felt organic, and
yeah, exactly. That's another point. In Dredd, it felt organic. Here, it felt more forced. Right. You know. Now, Eva Green does a great job with the material she has. She really. There's this wonderful scene where she's on the phone talking to Christopher Maloney, the cop guy who she manipulates, and she's talking to him as if she needs help. But her body language is saying, I could care less about this conversation. You know, she's sitting in a bathtub. She's like, oh, yeah? Well, but she's talking and acting as if she's like, please help me. Yes, please do so. You know what I mean? Like, her body language is saying one thing.
She came off like a phone sex operator.
Exactly, but in a good way. And in that, she's saying one thing, but she's doing another, and that was pretty cool. But everything that is potentially bad about the Sin City stories is ramped up to such a degree that, and in the news stories too, like in, I don't know what they call the stories in the Nancy storyline, but specifically in the Joseph Gordon-Levitt storyline, which I thought was a good one, even if it was just a small little one.
Yeah, that was probably the best part, but I honestly think it was also kind of pointless. The denouement, especially, where he basically sacrifices his life. He basically commits suicide by forcing his own dad to kill him because he would be embarrassed that someone got something over on him. And it's like, really, that's your plan? You put all this work into your epic revenge
Right,
And your
and
plan is to do something to embarrass the person you're trying to revenge, and then get killed. So
to make a point, right? It was a little silly. It was a little silly, but what I liked about it, and just to talk about that story itself, what I liked about it was Christopher Lloyd. He
yeah,
played he played the slimy doctor who used popsicle sticks to fix his broken hand and everything, you know.
that
Um,
was good. Christopher Lloyd, though, I mean,
he's good in just about anything. He's Christopher Lloyd, for God's sakes. You know, he's funny. But
I've said for years, ever since I saw that trailer for Gobstopper, I've wanted to see Christopher Lloyd play Willy Wonka.
yeah, but the Joseph Gordon-Levitt
So
story,
busy lifting drinks.
right,
Ah!
has a stripper getting her head cut off. The Nancy storyline has a woman scarring her face and
Mhm.
dyeing her hair and literally humping the shit out of a floor. Remember that scene? Marv is like, "Ugh, this looks like my sister is having sex. I'm gonna walk out of here." You know, and everything felt forced, and that's a good word, forced. You know, it didn't feel. It also didn't feel very pleasant either. The first Sin City, you're watching in cinematic amazement as the shit goes down. You know, and here you're just watching like, okay, we're gonna get to see some more, you know, of the same stuff and maybe a little different. Oh, you know, you're just left like you gotta take a shower. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I have. You know what? I mean,
So I think whatever happened between 2005 when the first Sin City came out and now brought down Frank Miller and Robert Rodriguez both, possibly in the spirit and in the mind. Uh,
I'm not
and
even going to excuse it. I think it's inexcusable that this movie was as painful to sit through as it was. It could have been at least watchably mediocre, but it wasn't. It was a hard.
right from the beginning, you could tell that there's some bad stuff. Like I'm going to give you an example. In the first Sin City, the opening credits are wonderful. I'll give you like there's this bit in there where it says "shot and cut by Robert Rodriguez," and in the commentary track for the movie, he says I put that in there instead of edited and filmed by because I wanted there to be an edge. He cared about multiple levels of edginess and sharpness and telling kind of a gritty story. Here, right, and in Sin City 2, the credits just kind of go by real quickly. It's just like, let's get it over with, whatever. Here's Sin City 2. Fuck you.
It really had. You know what? It written all over it was like obligation. I almost wonder if they were under some sort of rights obligation to make this film within a certain period of time. Otherwise, it was not going to get made, and they just, went autopilot through it.
That could have been the case. As kind of an aside, despite my feelings to this movie, there's a movie theater on the opposite side of the lake, of Lake Pontchartrain, on the north shore of the region. There's a movie theater called Movie Tavern, which is kind of like a bar, restaurant / movie theater for families and all that stuff. And they have an IMAX screen that they don't call IMAX. They call it MTX, Movie Tavern Extreme. It's a 3-story tall screen, and they were playing Sin City 2: A Dame to Kill For. And I thought I'd be willing to make a trip to see that in that kind of type of environment, despite the fact that I didn't really like the movie. I never got to do it, and I don't regret it, but that would have been something I would have gone out of my way to go see just to see if...
I did see the movie in 3D. Did you see it in 3D?
No, I didn't care to see it in 3D. I was like, no, I think standard 2D is enough.
In my case, the only reason I saw it in 3D was it was the only time that worked for me.
Was the 3D at least competent?
You know what? The 3D was one of the few things about the movie that was okay. It didn't. It was a pretty good 3D transfer, and I can chalk that up to the fact that the entire movie is made on a blue screen, so it's essentially a CGI movie just with human characters in it. So there's not much the transfer has to go through.
Sure.
So yeah, I will at least credit that the 3D was interesting. I
I'll
wouldn't suggest paying for it because I wouldn't suggest paying for this movie at all. In fact, I almost wish I demanded my ticket money back from it. I was so angry. You can't do that, Robert Rodriguez. You cannot wait a decade to make a movie, and then when you release it, you know what? This feels like the drop in quality that Caddyshack 2 had after Caddyshack.
And even Caddyshack 2 has some redeeming qualities to it in comparison to Sin City 2.
You're right.
In comparison, I'm saying.
That's true. I can think of a couple things in Caddyshack 2 that, if the movie is on, I might turn it on and hope to see that scene. Like the Dan Aykroyd part especially is so weird that it's...
Mr. Esterhaus.
Mr. Esterhaus.
And he's making like some weird...
Mr. Sanderson.
And he's making some weird food, like
some bean thing? Yeah.
Some bean thing, yeah, with eggs or something. Yeah, it's really weird. Real quick, before we move on, I want to bring up Jeremy Piven's acting.
Jeremy Piven was in this?
Yeah, he supposedly was supposed to play Bob, the Michael Madsen character from the first movie.
Really?
That's who he was supposed to be, but instead he played an impersonation of a New York taxi cab driver. Like that's how he played. He's like, yeah, partner. You know, what's the problem with this dame, huh? It was so forced and so bad. I was like, this is the asshole who had a problem with David Mamet. He was like, oh, I'm too good for David Mamet. I'm too good for theater plays and stuff like this. I'm gonna cancel out of this and do that. I'm Jeremy Piven. And here he is doing some of the worst acting in a bad movie that I've seen in a while.
Fuck Entourage.
Yeah, really.
I think
which is a shame because I love PCU. I loved him in PCU.
One thing that angered me, I think. Not angered me, but one thing that didn't help for my viewing of A Dame to Kill For is that just before I saw it that morning, I had finished watching Otto Preminger's Laura, which is a good classic film noir, and it demonstrates how you can do stylized writing, stylized dialogue, stylized cinematography and make it gel. You know, of course, it's not as crazy and over the top violent and such, but seeing a noir done well, and then seeing Sin City: A Dame to Kill For was just.
You know what what I would recommend? Everyone go and hunt down a copy of Kiss Me Deadly. Go see that. That is wonderful noir right there, and kind of a weird movie too. But it's really good. Go see that. Don't bother with Sin City 2.
I would recommend definitely Kiss Me Deadly, Double Indemnity, The Maltese Falcon, Touch of Evil, The Big Sleep.
Touch of Evil especially. That is just a beautiful film.
Oh well, yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say
these are all beautiful films, by the way, but this one in particular, I think.
Fritz Lang's The Big Heat is fantastic. What else? Let's see.
My favorite thing ever about Touch of Evil, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but there's a scene in Get Shorty where John Travolta's character, Chili Palmer, is watching Touch of Evil in the movie theater, and he's reciting every line along with the movie. So excited to be seeing it, and that rubs off.
And how could I forget Sunset Boulevard, of course?
Yes, that's a really interesting noir because it's about screenwriting.
Right, normally when you have a noir, it's a detective story, but Sunset Boulevard is much more steeped in the film industry. If you are a film buff at all, you
gotta see Sunset Boulevard, yes. It's the basis for many an unofficial remake, and for very good reason.
And just the cameos alone of old silent film screen legends in a 1940s
Buster Keaton, Eric von Stroheim, especially Eric von Stroheim. That was particularly interesting right there.
That's not even a cameo. That's a full character.
That's a full character.
and the best part is he's basically playing himself. He plays a man who used to be a director, but is now reduced to just basically being
a servant. Yeah.
Right. But H.B. Warner is also in the movie. If you're not familiar with him, he was really big in early silent films like Cecil B. DeMille's The King of Kings.
Yeah. In fact, all the cameos are old. They used to be big in silent films. That's the point. You know, like it's not me that got small. It's the films. Or what's the line?
You said it pretty close, so
I said it close enough. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but
great movie to recommend. Yes.
and Gloria Swanson's performance is to this day one of the most haunting and creepy performances in film.
She did a good Charlie Chaplin in it too. She did a good impression of Charlie Chaplin in that one scene. But yes, it's a very haunting performance.
Mr. DeMille, ready for my close-up?
I can't see my version of it. Just looks creepy. Her version of it is creepy. She did it creepy, but it was different. My version is like, I don't know. It's creepy in a molester kind of way, you know.
Oh shit.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously not being female, we don't have the ability to pull off the way she did it. But
well, I think hers went beyond gender. But I mean, yes, she did it in a very psychological, like, oh my god, this is horrifying, you know, type manner.
Just really quick, in case you guys are wondering why we're rambling, we literally don't have any decent subjects to discuss, so we're just kind of going off on a list of.
Wait, on cover, man.
I know.
Yeah, really.
I just, as if it hasn't been obvious.
Well, we can end the discussion now and just go eat dinner.
Well, no, I'm just pointing out that because I'm sure people are wondering if we have an agenda, and the answer is
we don't. We don't have one tonight. It's a bad month.
We have a little bit of one.
It's been a bad month so far for movies. Next week we have some stuff coming.
Oh, do we ever? Because this weekend I'm going to see Atlas Shrugged Part 3.
Oh God, who is John Galt? Yeah, that's
here's the best part. I have to go to a theater even further than the theater I normally go to for indie flicks. So I'm going to drive about an hour out of my way to see it. But I have to, because I saw the first 3.
You got to complete it. You got to complete the set.
I earned the right. I don't even think it's too big because I have to drive too far. I can't even do the drinking game during it. But I have to see it.
What's the runtime on those things?
Oh, I think they're about 2 hours each, give or take.
So
they're pretty excruciating, yeah.
Well, if you've seen the book Atlas Shrugged, it's a huge-ass freaking book.
Right.
So, you know, by no means are you... I mean, a trilogy actually makes sense for it.
There's a fucking hilarious comedy Bang Bang gag where the bookie has a blind date, and it's with Atlas Shrugged, and it's like, oh, I didn't see in your ad that you were this fat.
Well, this is where it's interesting with Atlas Shrugged, because Atlas Shrugged Part 1, first of all, is 102 minutes for Part 1. Part 2 is 112 minutes, and Part 3, it doesn't say, so we'll find out. Presumably, I mean, I hope it's not too long, because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there is a famous 70-page long monologue delivered by the character John Galt in the book.
They're gonna have to.
It's an uninterrupted 70-page monologue. It's a rant, basically, that lays Ayn Rand's political philosophy just straight out. So, I'm hoping, if this movie is going to be truly epically bad, I'm hoping that the entire last 2/3 is just his rant.
We can only hope.
Yeah, we can only hope, right?
I actually kind of want it to be. Here's the first movie had, I would call, a B-level cast, and it was not horribly directed. The special effects were terrible, but it was at least competent. The acting wasn't great because the dialogue made it hard for any actor to read. The second film is just a clusterfuck. God damn. Everything. Because, first of all, the entire cast is gone. They replaced it with new actors. This last film, they couldn't get all of the funding for it, so they had to launch a Kickstarter. And, once again, the entire cast is turned over.
You told me that all of these films have been crowdfunded in some way, right?
Well, no, the first film was funded, specifically, I believe there was some sort of conservative group that funded it. In fact, actually, let me see if I can...
Probably a super PAC or something.
Well, I have to point out, and I don't mean to cut you off, but this project gets funded, but there are so many other better, more creative projects out there that don't meet their funding goals on
Oh,
Kickstarter.
there is a wonderful irony in all of this, in that Ayn Rand contended she believed in a completely open market. That being that the market will decide whether something succeeds or not. And the market clearly has spoken on two separate occasions that no one wants to see Atlas Shrugged, because the first movie did not make its money back, the second movie did not make its money back.
Yeah.
So the market has spoken, and yet you keep doing it.
Well, that doesn't stop Hollywood, you know. I mean, well, sometimes it does. Sometimes it does, but on rare occasions.
Have you ever seen a major
I will say,
Hollywood sequel
well, I will-
to a film that was a huge bomb?
I will say, Bill, it's gonna stop. It's gonna stop Hollywood in the case of Sin City, because
Yeah, that didn't. The first one was at least well received and did somewhat well in the box office.
The first movie was a runaway success. It was made
Yeah.
for it was made for relatively cheap, and it made a couple $100 million.
Yeah.
I
This
looked it
one-
up, actually. I think
This
it made,
one plummeted.
yeah, not at all. So anyway, as far as Atlas Shrugged, that's going to be interesting. Apparently they originally wanted Charlize Theron, Anne Hathaway, Julia Roberts, or Angelina Jolie to play the main character of Dagny Taggart.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
They have what's that word? Integrity. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and politically, that's
Did you say Sandra Bullock?
the first person to play the lead character of Dagny Taggart was Taylor Schilling.
I don't know who that is. Some
first
soap opera actress, my guess.
Well, Taylor Schilling does have some things going for her. She was best known for starring. I mean, recently she's seen some good credentials for her work in Orange Is the New Black.
Oh,
She's
yeah,
Piper.
that's
Yeah.
a good show.
So that was
Wait a minute. She's the lead on that show,
yeah,
and she's also the lead in Atlas Shrugged Part 1.
yes.
I think she's just a young actress who needed, experience. Who needed a role.
Right, and you know what?
There's
Exposure.
nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
There's another key term there.
Exposure. Yes.
Her performance in the first Atlas Shrugged was the least of that movie's problems. So I'm not gonna dismiss it. I'm not gonna say it was anything great.
I've watched Orange Is the New Black, and she's fantastic on it. So I'm actually really surprised to hear that she had any involvement in this production.
The star who played Dagny Taggart in the second film, Atlas Shrugged Part 2, was Samantha Mathis.
That name sounds vaguely
Sounds familiar.
You may recognize her for her work as Princess Daisy in Super Mario Brothers.
Oh.
Oh my God! Yeah, holy shit!
She was also in American Psycho.
As one of the holy shit,
That's
Really?
a motorcycle or something.
bro! I'm about to go yell at this prick.
And you're actually doing it.
Hey, shut up out there.
So yeah, I mean Samantha Mathis. Needless to say, that's going to the B. Going from the B squad at the time, because I would say Taylor Schilling now, especially after Orange Is the New Black, is probably a hot commodity.
Yeah,
she was though. A few years ago, she was the B squad, so they went from that to the Z squad with Samantha Mathis.
Mm.
And the actress in the third one, I'm actually looking at that right now.
Nothing of note.
I'm looking it up. Okay, here we go. Her name is. What the hell?
That's a weird name, Ken.
Well, it's interesting. John Galt actually gets top billing in this movie, as opposed to Dagny Taggart.
That probably means he takes up the screen time,
Yeah,
which
he
means
he must have that speech.
the monologue happens, right?
But Dagny Taggart is Laura Regan, a Canadian actress, according to Wikipedia, best known for her roles in the films Saving Jessica Lynch, My Little Eye, Wes Craven's They, James Wan's Dead Silence, and How to Be a Serial Killer.
I've heard of.
She's on Mad Men as well.
Oh, what? And she's in this?
Well, that makes sense. Mad Men's a very greed is good kind of show. So
Yeah, but that has an undercurrent that these people are doing bad things.
well, yeah, I mean,
Atlas Shrugged is all conservative positive about these beliefs and everything. It's promoting this philosophy.
Very
So-
similar issues. You could probably make a lot of parallels between Atlas Shrugged and Mad Men.
Right. Mad Men is kind of more like the moral take on it, maybe.
Well, let's be honest. John Hamm is fucking charming as hell. So
I've actually never seen the show. So
you've seen John Hamm, though, right?
oh yeah, of course.
That man, something about him.
You would have his man babies.
No. That's more for me. That's more of an Adam Scott.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's very telling.
Let's get personal.
Who would you guys have a man baby with? Go.
Nick Cage, because it would be the most psychotic kid on the playground.
Nick Cage during the time of production on that Ridley Scott movie he was in.
I'm gonna just throw it out here. Werner Herzog.
Oh,
Okay.
it.
If only because that's a story that you could tell for the rest of your life.
I'd probably go with Chevy Chase now.
Chevy Chase.
Now. Not Fletch era?
Not Fletcher, no, now. Yeah, why not?
Come on, I mean,
Clark-
Dr. Rosenrosen?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, like, I'm gonna use the excuse that Beavis used in Beavis and Butthead Do America. Maybe if we just close our eyes and pretend he's a chick.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
You know, do you remember that joke in Billy Madison where he was asked, "Who would you rather bone, Meg Ryan or Jack Nicholson?" And he goes, "Jack Nicholson now or 1974?" And his friend goes, "74." And then he goes, "Meg Ryan."
But he has to think about it. There's a good. That's a wonderful scene because you see in his mind the cogs working. He takes about 2 seconds to think about that.
He's like, "No, I would prefer Jack Nicholson now." Oh, but I'll pick Meg Ryan if the choice is 74 Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, that's. And getting back to Atlas Shrugged really quick, the character of John Galt in the first film was just like a dude in the shadows. You never actually really see him.
Nikolai Carpathia. Oh wait, you did see him in the first Left Behind, but it's the same kind of like presence, right?
He's a silhouetted figure. He's like wearing a fedora and a trench coat.
It seems like a similar presence to Nikolai Carpathia.
The first half of Left Behind, I would say that's the case. He seems like he's going to be a tool used by evil people. Then he turns out he actually is the evil person. You know.
Now, I don't even know the actor of that in the first one. His name is Paul Johansson. But the guy who plays John Galt in the second film, and by the way, he's only in the end, and even then still pretty much shadowed out, is D.B. Sweeney.
Who's that?
Sounds familiar.
D.B.
Does
Sweeney.
sound familiar.
He's kind of a character actor in a lot of stuff.
Did he play Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley?
He was Shoeless Joe Jackson in 8 Men Out, if you've ever seen that. Have you ever seen Lonesome Dove, the miniseries?
I've heard that title, but no.
Okay, then you wouldn't know. Let's see. I'm going through a list of his filmography. Mostly a lot of TV stuff.
Have you reviewed that, Lonesome Dove?
I have not reviewed it, but I would give it a solid toast as far as TV miniseries go.
Somebody may have reviewed it for the site, and that might be why I know the title, but I'm not sure.
Was D.B. Sweeney the guy that robbed a plane and then jumped off of it and disappeared?
D.B. Cooper.
I know. I'm just fucking.
Oh, that was Bane in Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I will act in Lonesome Dove.
No, I just looked it up. We have never had a review of Lonesome Dove, but I will say it is on Netflix, Bill, and if you're looking for a miniseries to get into, Robert Duvall, Tommy Lee Jones, Robert Urich, Chris Cooper is in it.
Is Bret Hart in it?
What's that? Bret Hart, no. Bret
I
Hart
think he's in the Canadian version, right?
What?
I just remember Bret the Hitman Hart having a cameo in Lonesome Dove back in the 90s. Maybe it was a TV series at the time or something. I don't know.
There were a lot of
versions.
Well, no, there was some spin-offs. There was a spin-off TV series. There was the...
Yeah, maybe it wasn't a spin-off. Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually looking it up now since we're having that conversation.
Cool.
The Lonesome...
I don't want this to get lost by the wayside because we talked about Bane a few seconds ago, and I know I shouldn't be talking about it now because it's like...
Oh, the drop? You want to talk...
Whatever. No, I just wanted to say, if you have your tray tables up and your feet back in the full upright position, we will be ready to take off at 9:30 a.m. I just thought that'd be funny to do.
There's no survivors.
Make sure your seatbelts are fastened and your seats are in the full upright position, Batman. Always add, when you do the Bane voice, always add a random Batman because it just works so well.
Or Mr. Wayne or something, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he does say that too.
Mr. Wayne. Mr. Wayne.
So here, I'll run down the cast list of the Lonesome Dove miniseries for you, and let me know if you think this is a pretty cool cast list. Robert Duvall, Tommy Lee Jones, Danny Glover, Diane Lane, Robert Urich, Frederick Forrest, I mentioned B.B. Sweeney, Angelica Houston, Chris Cooper, Timothy Scott, Steve Buscemi.
God damn. This was in the 70s? I didn't even know he acted in the 70s.
Actually, Lonesome Dove came out in 1989.
Oh, that makes way more sense.
Yes.
This was around the time Steve Buscemi was on Pete and Pete.
It's
That was cool.
It's directed by Simon Winster, who's done a lot of great, I would say, genre movies. And then, sadly, he kind of went into a decline when he did The Phantom.
Oh, God, yeah, The Phantom.
I liked The Phantom as a kid. Here's
what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. Rewatch The Phantom and keep in the back of your brain that the guy that wrote Raiders wrote it.
Wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah. Because there are so many...
it's the same fucking movie.
There are so many unnecessary parallels with Raiders that it gets frustrating at a certain point.
I used to watch that all the time with my friends, The Phantom.
My dad's into that really old stuff, so my dad showed it to me as a kid. None of my friends were into it. We were like, "This is stupid. This is for old people."
Do you guys want to hear an interesting filmography here in Simon Windsor? You have The Light Horseman, which is a very interesting Australian movie. Lonesome Dove, Quigley Down Under, which, if you haven't seen,
I've heard it's really, really good, right?
It's a fun movie, yeah.
I always think of the Gary Busey as a Pomeranian movie, Quigley.
Here's the thing, Quigley Down Under is like mix a Western with Die Hard, because friggin' Alan Rickman is the main bad guy in Quigley Down Under, and it's just him doing Hans Gruber. That's all it fucking is.
Did you guys ever see the South Park episode where the Hans Gruber-like villain robs Burger King? That was their big mission. He's like, we robbed a Burger King.
I haven't.
No, they take over a little museum historical reenactment town. They kidnap kids in it and everything. But and you're wondering, what was the thing they did? What was it they did? We robbed a Burger King. He's like, here's your cut, and it's like a cheeseburger and onion rings. Yeah.
So listen to where this filmography goes from here, though. Quigley Down Under, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
Wait. Time out. I have to cut you off.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man. Have you seen it, Ken?
A long time ago. I need to rewatch it, though. Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson. How do you get better than that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, my first roommate that I ever had when I had my first apartment, something about you have to smoke cigarettes while you're playing pool, that's a line in the movie, and he would always tell me that, and he was like, you gotta watch it. This dude had, shitty taste. He watched, 2.5 Men, and, all those Big Bang Theory, all those nasty CBS sitcoms. But that okay, like his film shit, he really liked. He would always I would always get into arguments with him about how Natural Born Killers is not a masterpiece, and that's me saying that it's not a masterpiece because it's good, but it's not a masterpiece.
I would argue it is a masterpiece, but
Really?
but my argument is probably different than your friends who likes Mickey Rourke and Marlboro Man. I could probably give you a better argument.
That's very true. That's very, very, very true.
I've always been mixed on Natural Born Killers because while I think it's a really dynamic and just completely whacked out movie, I can't watch it without getting a severe friggin' headache halfway through. Just the quick cutting, it's ridiculous.
It is kind of a trial, but I think that's part of the point.
If you smoke weed and watch it, it's probably a lot more tame to get through.
Anything's more tame to get through with weed.
And to be fair, it is an Oliver Stone movie, so that's probably what it was meant to be filmed like. To Oliver Stone, this movie...
Actually, he did acid and mushrooms during the production of this movie.
Yeah.
Or at least mushrooms, yeah.
See, to Oliver Stone, fast editing he doesn't make a difference. To him, lingering on a shot for 2 seconds seems like an eternity.
This is sort of Oliver Stone's Cannibal the Musical, then.
Alright, so what else did Quigley Down Under director do?
Simon Windsor. After Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, which at the very least is interesting, he did Free Willy.
That's why I think I know his name, but Free Willy is entertaining. Have you guys...
Then he did Lightning Jack.
Don't know that.
With Paul Hogan. It's Crocodile Dundee in the Wild West.
And Cuba Gooding Jr.
Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. plays a mute.
I believe you brought this up on the show before.
Yes. Then he did Operation Dumbo Drop, which I actually kind of enjoy.
I liked it as a kid. It had Parker Lewis from Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Yeah, Ray Liotta, Danny Glover, Dennis Leary, Doug E. Doug. What the hell happened to Doug E. Doug?
Doug E. Doug pops up here and there, but the thing about Operation Dumbo Drop is that I would always confuse it with the Bill Murray Has an Elephant movie. I think it's called Larger Than Life. Is that what it's called?
Something like that, yeah.
Disney, I can't keep track of your pairing celebrities with animal movies, for the record.
Actually, you know what? I think you might be wrong about it being Bill Murray. No, it is Bill Murray.
No, it was.
I was thinking Matthew McConaughey, but they're both in it. So
yeah,
it's definitely Bill Murray. But that's the thing is like as soon as you said Operation Dumbo Drop, I thought Bill Murray, and then I had to think about it, and I was like,
Vietnam. That's the easy way to put it.
Wasn't that perfect casting though? Bill Murray and an elephant. Like seriously, like Bill Murray can act with anything. And him giving him a situation where he has to act with an elephant, that's like beauty right there.
If they ever did a live action Winnie the Pooh, he would be Eeyore. Period.
Yeah, man.
That's a line. That's a Nostalgia Critic line.
Is it?
It is totally. He says it in Nicolas Cage month as Nicolas Cage. If there was a live action Winnie the Pooh, I would play Eeyore. But Bill, you pointing out just now that Bill Murray could act against anything. He would be a great candidate for a Roger Rabbit sequel.
Yeah. He was in Space Jam. I mean, you know.
That's true. I mean, Space Jam's not a good example, but
it's not a good example. But he acted against green screen.
I wrote
he does have the single best line in Space Jam, though.
Which is?
Bill Murray makes a line about how, only black guys play basketball, and Michael Jordan's like, look at Larry Bird. He's white.
Larry Bird was a good player.
And his response, Larry's not white. No, he's clear.
That's not the best.
I love that line. It's like
I prefer
Big Lebowski or something. It's profound.
I prefer Danny DeVito's character's line when Bill Murray comes out. He says, "I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture."
Okay, yeah, that's all right.
That line. But again, I've seen Space Jam very recently. I wrote the Movie Boozer review for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good example, but it's a good example in terms of the kind of production that he has experience with. And he doesn't need much to get into Bill Murray mode. He just needs a setup, like, okay, what world am I supposed to be living in? I can go, that's Bill Murray right there for you.
And just to sum up Simon Windsor, there are a few movies I'm skipping over. I'm just going to mention that because most of these are like movies that no one's heard of anyway. In 1996 he did The Phantom,
Yeah.
and then he did a few movies for like made for TV and stuff, and then in 2001 he did Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles.
Ew.
Isn't there like a how did this get made on that?
There should be.
I think there. Maybe there's not. I think there is. They talked to somebody that worked on that movie.
Yes. Here's the thing. Crocodile Dundee 2 is one of the few sequels I would actually say in some ways is actually superior to the first film. I mean, it's not better overall. I would say they're about on even keel. But the third, why?
There's a great How I Met Your Mother joke for the How I Met Your Mother fans out there, where the Jason Segel's character Marshall, his father passes away, and like they make this big deal about like the last words you had with somebody, and his last words with his father was this voicemail that he had where his dad was like, or no. The voicemail comes later. The voicemail is the actual last words, but he thinks that his last words with his dad when he came to visit him in New York were like, check out Crocodile Dundee 3, it totally holds up.
I'd be satisfied with that. Those were my last words to my dad.
Oh.
Well, in hindsight, I wouldn't be, but later I probably would be at peace with it.
That's the thing, is like it starts to bother him that's those, but then he finds that he had a voicemail from his dad and blah 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 blah. You get the picture.
Yeah.
I think that's a good reference to Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, because I'm not familiar with that franchise, but I do remember when that movie came out because I was like 12 maybe.
Yeah.
Old enough to be aware of like movie trailers when they would come on TV and stuff.
Oh, I was psyched when I heard it was coming out because Crocodile Dundee and Crocodile Dundee 2 were played ad nauseum on the USA Network in the 90s.
Yes, and Comedy Central too at times.
Yeah, Comedy Central later got the rights to and so I've probably seen those movies 30 times, and they're the kind of movie you can watch, at any time. The first movie, I rewatched it recently and realized that it's got some flaws I'd never really noticed.
Uh-huh.
The second movie, the flaws were pretty much evident at that point, so it's almost weird, and that's like on a weird curve where the second movie is not as bad as it used to be.
Right.
But
if you see the first one to preface it.
Yeah, exactly. And the second movie does have my single favorite line or scene in it, where you learn, I don't have a gun, but I have a dunk. What's a dunk? And then this big brick shit house dude comes out and just goes, dunk. And then punches him.
I always remember from the first movie when the guy's doing cocaine and Crocodile Dundee's like, "Yeah, let me help you with that," and he thinks the guy has like allergies or something, so he puts the cocaine in a pot, puts a towel over the guy's head, breathe it in, you'll feel better.
Yeah. Oh man.
He just didn't get it. He just didn't get that was cocaine.
And of course the whole concept of Crocodile Dundee is by its nature pretty stupid, because no one gets to that age and is that completely ignorant of... I mean, even if you are in the middle of just a nowhere town... But that was the beauty of it, because it was an innocent time in the 80s where you could do stuff like that.
You could do stuff like that, right. And I thought it had a nice romantic comedy slant to it, like in the end, when they're in the subway, and they're like, pass along this message, I love you!
Yeah.
And then, the other people are like, I love you! She said I love you! And I thought, okay, that's kind of sweet,
And then you have movies like Coming to America, where it's like, you could have...
Brilliant, almost,
You could have a fairy tale kingdom in Africa, and no one thought... Hey, most of the kingdoms left in Africa are, like, horribly riddled with corruption, and, like, wouldn't Zamunda be a pretty bad place to live? And then, you realize it's just a movie, and, this was a time when you didn't have to bring, reality into your movie.
Yeah, it was also kind of being satirical of those kind of African countries and everything, because you can tell that the dad may have been a little corrupt, because he's like, oh, enjoy having your women bathing you.
I almost kind of saw James Earl Jones in Coming to America as like a light-hearted PG-13 version of Idi Amin.
Except he didn't eat people or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know
presumably.
for certain. We don't know for certain, but yeah.
That's a dated reference.
Well,
It's
I mean, if
still
you've seen The Last King of Scotland, that's at least within the last decade reference.
Listen, I haven't seen that, but all I know is that on Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, fantastic Live at the Met album, he makes a reference to that guy, and he makes a lot of dated 80s references in that, and I still don't know who it is.
You don't know who Idi Amin is? He was a horrible African dictator who he once held. He claimed he was going to hold Christian citizens hostage if a documentary film crew didn't make the edits he wanted.
Okay.
There was a documentary made about him, and he actually called them up and was like, "Look, I would like you to make certain edits in your film." And they're like, "No, it's our movie." And he said, "Oh, okay, I'll just hold some people hostage until you do."
Oh
Would you like some Wikipedia history, Bill, just for fun?
I guess so. Let's go.
Idi Amin was the third president of Uganda, ruling from 1971 to 1979. Amin joined the British colonial regiment, the King's African Rifles, in 1946, serving in Kenya and Uganda. Eventually, he held the rank of Major General in the post-colonial Ugandan Army and became its commander before seizing power in the military coup of January 1971, deposing Milton Obote, I think it is. He later promoted himself to Field Marshal while he was the head of state. So anyway, needless to say...
he promoted himself.
Right.
He promoted himself. Like, that in itself kind of tells me all I need to know about
to
the
Field
guy.
Marshal, which, that's a 4-star general. Or, no, I'm sorry, that's a 5-star general.
That's a more informative statement than you know. He promoted himself.
And just to give you an idea of how nice this person was... the number of people killed as a result of his regime is estimated by international observers and human rights groups to range anywhere from 100,000 to 500,000 people.
So the Robin Williams joke that I was referring to, I don't remember what the setup to it is, but the joke is, this is like Idi Amin looking at Gandhi going, "You're too intense." No.
So now you understand that joke a little bit more.
I get the joke now, yes.
So, with that said, I will actually say Last King of Scotland's a fantastic film that I highly recommend you watch. And if you want a good laugh after seeing The Last King of Scotland, listen to Mark Maron's episode where he interviews Kevin MacDonald, the director. You will love it.
Time out.
You just made the same mistake. Hold on, let me go, Bill, because the mistake that you just made in your head is the same mistake that Mark Maron made. He thought that he was getting Kevin MacDonald,
right,
when the person who walked through his door to interview was Kevin MacDonald, the Scottish filmmaker.
For those who might not know, I think Bill Arsenault, you're not familiar, right?
With who?
Kevin
MacDonald, the Canadian.
The Canadian actor?
Kids in the Hall.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about.
He was in Kids in the Hall. He also voiced one of the tallest on Invader Zim. That's where I first became familiar with him. He's also very famous for doing Pleakley in Lilo and Stitch for the Disney.
You want a really funny and awkward episode of Mark Maron's What the Fuck podcast, look for the one that's called Kevin MacDonald, Kevin MacDonald, because he cut together he interviewed both separately, not at the same time.
Kevin MacDonald is hilarious.
So, like, the first half hour or so of the episode it starts with like a 10-minute section of Maron basically explaining how much of an idiot he is. And then the next 20 minutes to a half hour is him doing his damnedest to interview Kevin MacDonald, even though he made it clear that he
came prepped with Kids in the Hall questions about Simon and Hecubus and
right. So basically, I don't want to give away too much because it's a great episode to watch. It's hilarious.
Okay.
What I will say, so I don't give away too much for you, is what he was expecting was to interview someone he knew a little bit from the Kids in the Hall. He had seen The Last King of Scotland, and that's literally the only experience he had with Kevin MacDonald. Right. And when this random Scotsman walks in the room, he basically explains he was so afraid of telling the truth as to what happened that he did his damnedest to interview straight without any, and just keep asking questions to try to get common ground.
I think that's what I would do too. I mean, I don't.
The interview comes off really well, actually, given the fact, but you can tell if you listen to it that Mark Maron has like a line of panic on his mind.
That's hilarious.
And then after he's done with that, he cuts in a separate interview with Kevin McDonald that's as a contrast. And so film fans out there will enjoy that little bit of just ridiculousness. But and actually he gets some very interesting stuff out of Kevin McDonald. So
okay, cool.
If you're a fan of either or both.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys want to talk about terrible high school movies?
Sure, why not?
We got a little bit. Yeah, we got a little bit of time left. Sure.
This is pretty much, what is it? We're in the second week of September now, so everybody's back to school now officially. If you're going back to school, most likely you're there.
Right.
So I was thinking, let's talk about some high school movies.
Wait, Ken, you're still drinking that crap?
I paid for it, dude.
I'm still drinking this crap, and yes, it's because I paid for it.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, there you go. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, Bill. This is Ronco Clipper. So
it's Ronco. Okay.
Yeah, it's an offshoot.
Yeah. Is it really an offshoot?
Ronco is in.
This tastes worse than regular Ronrico does.
Yeah.
Well, if it's Ronco,
it's a Ronco
Bill, just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
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 That's the whole Ron Popeil joke. Yeah. Well, anyway, so we're back to school.
Bad movies set in high school. That's what you wanted to talk about, correct?
What about bad movies set in high school? What's that movie with Ben something?
Ben something.
He was in 3:10 to Yuma.
I didn't see that.
He was in a high school movie with Cisco.
I know it was fucking Sabrina the Teenage Witch in it.
No, but
different movie that
Mary Jane Watson was from Kirsten Dunst was in it, and Cisco the rapper and Mila Kunis were in it.
Cisco is more of a singer than a rapper. I think.
Okay, singer or whatever. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I can't think of the name of it. Let's look it up. You guys come up with some stuff while
you look that up. I'm going to go ahead and make a very controversial statement right now.
Go ahead.
Lead us off.
Ooh.
The Breakfast Club always pissed me off.
Breakfast Club. I was actually
Come on, dude.
Well, here's the thing. I was thinking about bringing it up this morning when I posed the idea for this topic, and it's not that because I love The Breakfast Club, but here's the thing. I also, and again, I'm a big fan of the 80s. I'm a big fan of cheese or camp, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And The Breakfast Club delivers both. The Breakfast Club is also, it's dated but timeless in this weird way.
Here's the thing. My problem with The Breakfast Club is that its conceit alone is something which frustrates me. Now, granted, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm probably one of the... I might be alone in the room here, but in high school, I found it incredibly easy to not get a detention.
Right.
All it required was not fucking around. Now, don't get me wrong.
That's not the point. What's this got to do with it?
The problem is the movie tries to make excuses for every single one of these kids and the positions in life that they are in. It makes excuses for them as opposed to coming up with some sort of, in my opinion, these are kids, all of whom are fuck-ups in one way or another.
Right.
And they proceed to rebel against someone who the principal's the only mistake he makes is pointing out that they're fuck-ups.
Right.
I think you're taking a very strict view of this movie. Like, you're correct, but you're too correct. You know what I mean? Too correct for your own good.
Judd Nelson, completely unlikable character. I don't care about his excuses.
Because
my father beats me. That's
would
not an excuse to be a dick.
Judd Nelson's charming as hell in that movie. Like,
I disagree. I don't think he is a dick.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, all these characters, while they have their own problems and are fuck-ups in one way or another, in the end are transformed by their experience together. We don't know if they're actually going to implement this later when they get back to real life, when they get back to high school and everything, like during the weekday and everything. But I think we don't know, and that's the point. But we feel like we've learned something in the end.
I will tell you the scene in the movie that sets me off the most is the scene where you find out the one kid's father is a janitor, and all the other kids do is rip on the father. They don't treat him like a human being, and he's just a guy doing his job. These are people who are completely unlikable. I do not love The Breakfast Club. I think it's severely overrated, and I think I cannot empathize with any of the characters in it.
I don't.
They're broad stereotypes, and that's it.
But on the argument that it's cheesy and campy and it makes me laugh, there's a scene, the dance scene in the movie, and I've never really seen anyone address this before, so I'm going to address it right now. Emilio Estevez, it's right after they all smoke pot with Judd Nelson's character. I can't remember his character's name. Johnny something.
Johnny something's good.
His name is John Bender.
Bender, that's what it is. Okay.
John Bender over. Okay.
Yeah, I know all the cast names, so I'll probably use those over the character names. But anyway, after they all smoke pot for the first time, for some reason Emilio Estevez is up in this room by himself smoking pot, and the room has windows, and he exits this little room and goes in a circle around this a top layer. It's not like, I was going to say balcony, but it's not like a balcony. And he goes around the room, he does all these dumb, energetic 80s dance moves, but then he does this thing where he's like walking and punching. I'm going to do it right now. It's like... that didn't look great. Let me get back further. He's like...
Yeah, please do.
He's walking and punching. So he's walking... Well, he's like shuffling his feet. His feet aren't lifting off the ground, and he's punching. You have to see it. It's really funny, and it fucking cracks me up every time I see it. He does that over to the door to the room he was in originally, goes back into the room, screams at the top of his lungs, and the glass shatters. And this is like the only part of the movie that's like some fantasy, like he made the glass shatter screaming. And you have to see it. It's funny as shit. It fucking cracks me up every single time I see it.
Well, point being, I think the movie is...
it's overrated.
It's not lived up to what I think some people remember it as.
A lot of people build it the fuck up. I like it, but at the same, like I said, I love that scene, and I fucking crack up at that scene. So I definitely like it for different reasons than probably like people that saw it when it came out.
Now, I've heard an interesting theory about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I'm sure, Bill, I think you may have even mentioned this in conversation.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off, if you think about it, Ferris Bueller, very much like in The Breakfast Club, how those characters were unlikable, Ferris Bueller's kind of a using asshole who doesn't really have any... he's kind of a sociopath.
Here's the deal. That was Mike Nicholson. Ferris Bueller, if you look at Ferris Bueller as Cameron's hallucination, it's a fucking movie. It's a fucking masterpiece of a movie. It's John Hughes' best movie.
That is a fan theory that I've heard that makes total sense to me. That the entire Ferris Bueller family, like even his father, his mother, and sister, technically are figments of Cameron's imagination. It's all concocted specifically to give him the ultimate friend.
Right.
And maybe even the girl, maybe Ferris Bueller's girlfriend, whatever her name is also a figment of his imagination. And that he just went for a joyride in his dad's car that day.
Yeah, what is her name? Sway?
No. She has a weird name, though. Sway is a good
Sloane.
Sloane, yes, that's correct.
When Cameron was in Egypt's land.
It's a good movie. I would say it's a good movie regardless of that fan theory, but that fan theory really ties it together.
It blows your mind when you think about it, yeah.
First time I heard it, it blew my mind, and yeah, it makes so much sense, and yet, I mean, granted, the entire movie focuses on Ferris Bueller, so that, I mean, I doubt that ever even moderately entered into John Hughes' mind.
Right.
But it does make the movie really deep. And I have to give the movie credit. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is also the quintessential Chicago movie, because it's like taking a tour of the sites in Chicago that you probably will go to when you visit it for the first time. They go to a Cubs game, they go to the Art Institute of Chicago, they go to the Sears Tower.
Right, and I mean, those are all, yeah. I was going to say the fact that those are all there says something, but those are landmarks that weren't going to go away.
Right, exactly. I mean, the only thing that would nowadays, if they made it,
I was thinking there was some foresight to it, but
nowadays, if they made it, they'd go to Millennium Park, and instead of Cameron staring at that piece of artwork, you know, damn it, I forget the name of that artist. But the Impressionist artist, you know, the closer you get, the less defined the girl's face becomes.
All right.
Instead, Cameron would be looking at the giant bean, the reflecting bean, which, if you haven't seen, it's in Millennium Park in Chicago. It's this piece of sculpture that's literally just a giant silver bean.
Was it made by Andy Warhol?
It could have been, for all you know. It's a giant mirror, though. It reflects the city and bends it in shape.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
It's cool, but it's also just kind of mind-boggling. Millennium Park is full of modern art stuff that's just baffling. Like, there's this fountain that takes pictures of the last person who looked at it, and, for a second, your face will be on this fountain and stuff like that.
That's pretty cool. I like that. That's some pretty neat stuff. Are those not to get off topic of the movie, but are those projects funded by the local government?
Actually, I believe so. Millennium Park was kind of the last major project that Mayor Richard M. Daley put together.
Because it sounds like one of those works programs, just to get things going, just to get people to work, and that sounds really cool. Or some kind of arts initiative or something. I like that kind of stuff.
The U.S. Yeah. I forget what that line from Mr. Show is. It's like the U.S. government improving the arts by severely limiting them.
Well,
yeah.
wait till you hear this. The city of Chicago, over time, paid $475 million to build Millennium Park, to fund it. $475 million, borne by Chicago taxpayers, and actually some of that money, to be fair, was private donations. The original budget was $150 million. Some people have argued cronyism, poor planning, things like that. I would argue that it's Chicago, and Mayor Daley will get things done no matter how expensive. Well, did when he was mayor. Would have gotten things done no matter how expensive it was, because for all intents and purposes, he was a ward boss. Yeah. You think of think of the Untouchables and how city government is depicted in that film. That's pretty much the way it is.
My dad worked for the Delaware city government for a number of years.
Did he see similarities and that sort of thing?
I don't know. I've never talked to him about the Untouchables, but I've never seen the whole movie, and it's not. Yeah, I know. It's not like I'm avoiding it. It's just I haven't had the chance.
It's not like you're avoiding it. like it's after me.
The classic line in the Hobo with a Shotgun trailer and the movie. The line about he's only killing dirty cops. We're all dirty
cops.
That's
we could do an episode about the greatness of Hobo with a Shotgun. That I would compare that to Citizen Kane in terms of brilliance.
In terms of what it accomplishes, it's
And
on
for
a
what
similar level.
Yeah, I would say so, and why not?
It's the ultimate grindhouse tribute film.
Yes, I will agree with that.
It manages to become. It's not just a tribute film; it's a piece of grindhouse in itself, and it leaves you wanting, especially with that great subplot involving the plague.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's this funny Family Guy aside where it's Vietnam and Peter is with some troops in Vietnam.
Oh, he's a clown?
He's walking behind them dressed as a clown, and he's like, "You guys are all idiots. They're going to be looking for camouflage." That was me watching Hobo with a Shotgun with my friends. So it's just like, you guys are all idiots. This is going to be talked about for years to come, and you guys are just sitting here ambivalent, fucking asses.
To this day, the Jason Eisner, the director of Hobo.
He is a good filmmaker. He really is. He's very impressive.
He was great with that. The only things he's done since then, he's done a small segment for the ABCs of Death in VHS 2.
That was my favorite part of VHS 2 was his bit. That was
Slumber Party Alien Abduction.
That was pretty horrifying stuff right there. I thought in a genuinely scary way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like having heart palpitations. Like, oh my god.
The other thing that I think is a small miracle for Hobo with a Shotgun is the fact that he was able to make Halifax, Nova Scotia look like a gritty American city.
Yeah.
Now,
really gritty. Like
Halifax, Nova Scotia is about the least threatening looking city that you'll ever see if you've ever been there.
I think some Trailer Park Boys was filmed there.
Yeah, well, I believe Trailer Park Boys was filmed in Nova Scotia, so yeah, I think you're right. But doesn't it take place in more of a rural community?
I don't know if they've ever specified where the trailer park is, but they do business around that area a lot.
Mm-hmm. It would make sense. I mean, Nova Scotia, other than a handful of cities, is pretty much just rural. So.
Speaking of which, shout out Netflix Trailer Park Boys season 8. It went up. When did it go up? Like last week. It's pretty good. Check it out.
Yeah,
Friday.
I think this is a good time to close things up. Why don't we give a Netflix recommendation and then end for the night?
Real quick, can I talk about Rock and Roll High School?
Oh, which one? The sequel?
Oh no, I've never seen the sequel. But when I did the live tweet of the first Rock and Roll High School, you had recommended the sequel to me.
Yes, I do. I can probably point you in the direction of it. So.
Okay, Ken, if that's not on our list, add that to the list. Rock and Roll High School 2, because I completely forgot that existed.
Rock and Roll High School.
All right.
But the first Rock and Roll High School, the guy that directed it is really interesting. He was a Roger Corman protege,
mm-hmm.
and he's been on the podcast The Fogelnest Files, which everybody should go check out because that's a fantastic podcast. But his episode, they get into some of Rock and Roll High School, and there's some insight on it. But Rock and Roll High School, I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but if you like the Ramones, it's worth checking out. The third act is good. The first two acts are bullshit, as far as I'm concerned, because I just don't. It's just way too broad and goofy, and not in a good way, not the kind of broad and goofy that I like. And maybe it's the high school setting, but there's just none of the actors are high school aged, and they have the lead actress sing the song "Rock and Roll High School" really badly at one point, and there's this scene. And I go off. I wrote the review of Rock and Roll High School for the website, Movie Boozer. And there's this scene where she comes home and she smokes a joint, and she puts on a Ramones record, and you see what the record is. I think it's Road to Ruin, and the song that plays isn't on that record, which, I'm just like, why would they make that mistake to begin with?
I realize, Bill, that you've brought this conversation full circle. The director of Rock and Roll High School, Alan Arkush,
yes,
directed Caddyshack 2.
Ouch.
Too, yeah. Yeah.
And also Andy Kaufman's one and only starring role in Heartbeats.
Again, all of these are discussed on the Fogelnest Files podcast, which I highly recommend. It's a really fantastic podcast. But okay, so she's smoking weed and listening to this Ramones song that's not on this record, and she imagines or hallucinates, because in movies when people smoke weed they hallucinate. She hallucinates that the Ramones are in her room singing to her, and it just like escalates. Like at first, it's just kind of normal, like it's just this normal fantasy. But then they cut to Marky Ramone, the drummer, in the yard. Like they cut out the window. The camera's in the window, and he's outside drumming. And then they cut back to the girl, and she's in her bra and panties, like that. And that was weird enough, but then it goes further. She goes to the bathroom and gets in the shower, and one of them is in the shower. Like I think it's the bass player, Dee Dee Ramone, is in the shower, and then she's just got a towel on. You're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, I can't even explain it. Like it baffles me. That's a scene that happens in Rock and Roll High School. But okay, I'll just close. I'll wrap it up by just talking about the third act, which is where eventually she meets the Ramones. The whole movie is like she's the Ramones' #1 fan, and she meets the Ramones. She's like, I have songs that I've written for you guys, which they never show her as a musician in the movie. So I guess they're just lyrics, and I wouldn't. If you presented that to somebody, that's not saying I wrote a song. That's just lyrics. That's like, hey, do half the work on this. So the Ramones like her stuff so much that they just show up at the high school the next day, and all hell breaks loose.
They help her destroy the school, basically.
Yeah, it becomes a fucking war zone at the drop of a hat. And that's a lot of fun, because it's like constant Ramones songs playing. The Ramones are stiff and awkward as shit every time they're on screen in this movie. Even so in the third act, but I mean that sort of adds to it, because like I said, the whole movie has this sort of Corman feel to it, like it was probably filmed in like a week, and it's very cut and run, you know what I mean? So that's all I gotta say about Rock and Roll High School, but I thought that was worth bringing up. Ron Howard's brother Clint Howard is also in it.
Because why the fuck not?
Well, I mean, I was going to say, like, more than he would be in other stuff. Like, he's got a bit of a more prevalent role than he would in other things, because, like, he's usually just a bit actor.
So, with that said, then, because I believe that's on Netflix, so that could be a Netflix recommendation for you.
Yeah, I think that is on Netflix. Or it was when I reviewed it.
So, Bill Arsenault, do you have any Netflix recommendations?
The only thing I can recommend off the top of my head is Bob's Burgers.
Ah, okay.
I've gotten into that show, and I'm still getting through it. I think I'm on season 3 right now. So, it's pretty funny stuff. H. John Benjamin, of course, was wonderful. So go check it out.
I've seen they did a reference to Akira. Is that what it's called? The anime movie Akira?
Akira, yeah.
And that was so bizarre that they would do a reference like that, because it was like a really Adventure Time level animation reference. You know what I mean? Because I think Adventure Time is also referenced Akira.
Yeah.
Which that's an interesting show to have done that.
I wouldn't. That show's got some anime influence on it.
Well, it's definitely out there enough to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's got sort of an epic running story.
Yes.
So I have some Netflix recommendations then. I actually have a couple to give. First of all, I've actually not even seen this movie, but I'm going to be seeing it sometime soon. But it's on Netflix, and so I may as well. The movie is called The Greatest Show on Earth, 1952. It won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's Cecil B. DeMille directed, and it's recognized by many critics to be the worst film to have ever been given the Best Picture Oscar.
Even worse than Crash?
It regularly tops lists. along with Cimarron. And yeah, Crash is up there too.
To clarify, not Spirit Stallion of Cimarron.
No, we're talking like a really old movie. Cimarron won 1930 Oscar for Best Picture.
Is this also about a horse?
It's a Western.
Okay.
But the 1952 movie, though, The Greatest Show on Earth, won the Best Picture Oscar, beating out The Quiet Man, John Ford's film, John Huston's Moulin Rouge, not to be confused,
Yeah.
Ivanhoe, and Stanley Kramer's High Noon.
Oh, that's.
And so just pointing that out, if you're looking for something that's kind of baffling, because now granted I haven't seen, so I'm not even judging it as a bad movie or not, because I haven't actually even seen The Greatest Show on Earth, but I'm going to be seeing it soon, so anyone else who cares to. The movie is 152 minutes long, that's the other thing.
Damn.
So it's an epic film about the circus.
Go watch this movie and tweet at us, Movie Boozer,
Right.
if you watch it.
Other movies to recommend, You're Next was added to Netflix.
Oh, okay.
And if you're looking for a just ridiculous, silly, stupid horror movie that you will... Here's the thing. You're Next does have a host of characters that you will not like, but unlike The Breakfast Club, You're Next proceeds to kill those characters in creative and violent ways.
Now that's a good idea. We should kickstart this a slasher Breakfast Club.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a great idea.
Just like Rocky or Rocky.
And then, besides those two films, also, for those who haven't seen it, A Simple Plan was also added, which is Sam Raimi's, basically, Coen Brothers film. The Coens actually helped him write the script, as far as my understanding.
And he helped them write the Hudsucker Proxy, so...
Right, it was kind of a tit for tat.
Yeah, even Steven.
Right.
Hey, I love the Hudsucker Proxy. So
Me too. I do. I'm not dissing it. I like that movie.
But yeah, Simple Plan is Sam Raimi's best dramatic film, and as far as you watch it, you will not even. You will know it's a Sam Raimi film from the directorial style, but you will not even recognize, just because he normally doesn't take himself seriously. So that is all that I have to recommend. So I'm going to go ahead and close up the podcast for the day. And thank you guys for joining us on this, to quote the Nerds, hostful podcast. Because we didn't really have a topic, we just kind of chatted.
All right, take care.
Take care.